Hey, it's your old pal Slim, and this is 70 Millimeter, finally a podcast about movies. Each week, I'm joined by famous artist Danny Haas.
I'm sorry.
And writer-poet Proto.
Being the mother of Satan's child is kind of a big deal.
Later in this episode, we're focusing on the horror classic Rosemary's Baby. Enjoy. Big movie news. HBO Max is out. New streaming service. I just want to say the library in this app is pretty darn good. I thought like we had it made in the shade with Amazon Video's trash like VHS library of crummy horror movies and stuff. But this is like an upgrade of movies. Like, so let me just rattle off a few movies that I added. The original Solaris that we've been talking about doing. I know Proto's been drooling over that movie for some time. It's not a Herzog movie, but we'll make do. The original Batman 89, which we're doing next week.
Oh.
Vampire. The Witches of Eastwick. Critters.
Ugh.
The entire or the majority of the Studio Ghibli library. North by Northwest, Eraserhead, 2001, The Abyss, Apocalypse Now, The Harry Potters, just to name a few.
I forgot that it was even happening. Not on my radar. I don't. I'm not one to subscribe to another streaming service, but I did see the list of movies, and I was aghast at what was on there. They have some older movies, and every movie feels handpicked. I couldn't believe as I'm looking at this list, there was every other one I wanted to see it, and it was a movie I hadn't seen before. Amazing. Danny, your thoughts?
I haven't looked yet, but I watched you guys drool over it in Slack, and I'm very excited for it.
They have Turner Classic Movies is one of the like mini hubs included in HBO Max, and I'm not. So like the main press rollout of this is just like, oh, HBO Max is a mess. The search sucks. But I haven't, and it's like confusing to sign up, but I've never subscribed to HBO before. I don't have Now or Go. I don't really watch Game of Thrones. So this is just like a brand new app to me. And they have Singing in the Rain, Rebel Without a Cause, the original Star is Born, An American in Paris. And I don't know, it's pretty legit. Like I feel like I could just watch Turner Classic Movies for the next couple of weeks. Like my dad watches his old VHSs, you know, in hours at a time. So I'm pretty stoked to dig in on what looks to be a pretty solid library. But when was the last time we saw Singing in the Rain?
Not this decade.
Should we do Singing in the Rain or a musical that's not Cats as a bonus episode for this podcast?
I'd love to do a musical.
I mean, we have Hamilton coming up in July.
Thanks for coming, Danny. Let's talk about maybe Danny's replacement host next week.
We got Lin-Manuel coming in.
This episode, we're discussing Rosemary's Baby. You know, what's been called the greatest horror movie ever made.
Who says that?
Really?
We'll see. That's what I read online. People call it all-time greatest horror film. We'll see if everyone here
They've seen The Rise of Skywalker, right?
It's because you're a dyad, Kylo Ren, the two of you, this whole time. We don't need to get into TROS, but Rosemary's Baby is our main feature presentation this week. We're going to get into it. Next week is probably the biggest episode we'll have ever done when we discuss Tim Burton's Batman, the first film. Proto has not seen it. I'm very excited to spend time watching that movie, just embracing the experience with the two of you and the VHS Villagers.
I haven't been this excited for an episode in a long time. Mostly bored doing this, so it's exciting to have a movie that I'm really thrilled to watch.
I'm glad we're finally around the 20 episode mark. We're finally getting Proto enthused to record every week. So
I got him on board.
I'm just pleased that that's taking place. We rate all the movies we see on Letterboxd. You should join up and get a Letterboxd account, be friends with us. You can get links to the upcoming movies on a Letterboxd list in the episode notes. You can follow us through there as well. And if you share the show on social media, you are automatically entered to win a full year of Letterboxd Pro, which is Letterboxd Pro is free, but if you're a Pro member, you get some additional cool features, no third-party ads. You can view your history in movies, a lot of amazing sorting options. You can see where a movie is streaming when you're looking it up, which is super helpful. This week's winner of a year of Letterboxd Pro, Ileana Jade on Twitter. Congratulations. Thank you for sharing the show.
Congrats.
Before we get into Rosemary's Baby, I know it sounds like it could get heated in here. You know? Proto, I saw that you watched The Conjuring this past week. Can you please let us inside your heart and explain that to us, how it was?
I started The Conjuring a couple months ago. I made it a half hour in. Then I had to take a break, and I was able to come up with enough excuses to not revisit it and eventually forget that I had started it. But then I saw that Danny, somehow it came up in conversation that Danny had seen it. I think you both gave it 5 stars. I thought, we're watching Rosemary's Baby. Let me get into the horror mood. So I put on The Conjuring, and I made it all the way through. It's a crazy movie, outside my wheelhouse. Very scary. A lot of jump scenes, but some really beautiful cinematic moments. I love the scene at the clothesline. That jump was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It just looked awesome as well. And also the scene where they are taking the recording equipment down into the basement, just not hearing anything out of the only hearing what's coming through the microphone was so cool. So I love those moments. I gave the movie 3 stars because I can't see myself giving a movie more than 3 stars where I felt terrible the whole time I watched it.
What did you give that war movie? Come With Me, Come See Me. What was the rating on that movie?
Come and See? I don't know, 4 stars, I guess?
Because that just defeats your argument that you just made right in front of us. Weren't you physically ill while watching that movie about war?
I wasn't physically ill the whole time. And that was more of a, it's a different kind of illness,
Understood. Okay. Or did you watch anything else this past week?
I did. I watched Scoob with my kids. It's a new animated movie that came out. You can rent it. And I gave it 2 stars. It looked really good to the eyeballs.
Did it?
Yeah, it's just, it's light on everything else. Not much of a story. It kind of drags on, even though it's only 90 minutes long. Kind of, just another animated movie you can put to the wayside. But I did watch something else that I haven't logged yet.
Oh, no.
On Letterboxd. And if you saw the live stream this Saturday, you know what I'm talking about. Because everyone knows that I am the spiritual counselor here. I provide guidance, and I also bring spiritual healing. And now that let's see, what month are we? It's May. It's almost the end of May. It's been about 5 months that I feel that the healing can truly begin. And I know that it's my time. So I watched The Rise of Skywalker.
I knew it. I knew it.
Oh my God.
I knew it.
For the second time. And on Saturday, we were able to heal as we devoted an entire live stream to The Rise of Skywalker.
Am I in hell? Am I in hell right now?
You heard my thoughts. You know where I stand.
So tuning in.
So let's just, maybe we need to remind people about how that live stream went, how your thoughts were shared on our 70mm Pod IG account, which you should follow and turn notifications on for. Did your rating change on the second viewing at all?
Yeah,
you
it
gave
did.
it 5 stars, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I gave it 5 stars. This time it's a 4-star movie for me, because that first viewing will always be a 5-star. And sometimes you can't recreate the magic of the first time you see a movie. You know, it's opening weekend, it's Sunday morning. I'm in there alone with a full house in the theater. I'm just taking it in for the first time. And it's like truly a magical experience that I'll never forget. And that was a 5-star experience. But, you know, this time I'm sitting at home. It's after work, you know, just seeing it on my regular TV and kind of picking it apart more, you know, and not having that emotional impact of the first time you see it. So yeah, it loses some of its luster. But yeah, still a 4-star movie for me.
Wow. I will say that's one of the many benefits of Letterboxd. You can rate different viewings, you know, of the movie that you've seen, different dates. You can give it different star ratings. I'm not sure if I'm going to delve any deeper into my TROS thoughts. People can find my Letterboxd review, my 2 Letterboxd reviews. Got very emotional in those reviews. I think I might have gone through a midlife crisis as I wrote those reviews at various points. I remember distinctly leaving the Penn Cinema Theater that night and sitting in my Jeep just with my face in my hands, trying to come to grips with what just transpired after months of waiting and anticipation.
Doesn't it feel good to be healed now after Saturday, though?
You know, it was an amazing event Saturday. Thank you for that, Proto.
When I joined the live stream and we both had a conversation about TROS, I hope people were able to experience that. Danny, what about you? What else did you watch this week?
Well, I have to rectify some wrongs that I did last week that I was reminded about by my wife. One of the movies I watched last week on a Monday night. So we started a thing with our daughters, Monday movie nights. So mom and dad, me and Casey get to pick the movie to watch with one of the kids. Olive has been dying to watch Jurassic Park for the first time. And so I didn't talk about this last week because I didn't think about it. But
yeah, I got an angry DM.
Yeah, you did.
About this.
I saw that. And it was amazing to watch her experience Jurassic Park the first time. She loved it. Watching her hide under the covers on the specific scenes that scared the crap out of me as a kid too was really funny. That raptor scene in the kitchen is an all-time scene. Still looks great. You know, it's funny. We watched it in high def. I don't think it was 4K because I don't have a 4K TV, but it's funny. I always thought the graphics held up pretty well, but even in high def, some of the CG stuff looked off now. So I need to start watching it back on my VHS tapes.
Oh. Some people might be shocked to hear that because
there's a couple scenes. There's a couple scenes with like the CG T-Rex that looked a little off on in high def. So there's flaws in the high def stuff.
Wow.
Get out of my face. And so this Monday night was Darcy's turn, and she had been wanting to watch Soul Surfer, the story about Brittany Hamilton getting her arm bit off surfing, and watching her come to grips with that. And it was fine. A little cheesy. Not enough shark attacking, but that was fine. Really cool shots surfing, so I liked that. But other than that, it was an okay movie. I'm not putting it up on Letterboxd.
What was Darcy's star rating of Soul Surfer?
She would have given it 5 stars easily. She loved it. It's that level of cheese for kids. They loved it.
In the future, maybe you will get enough shark attacks when we do Jaws.
Which kid am I showing Jaws?
Can you get the whole family together in the same room when you fire up Jaws?
Go back in the beach. So back to my Letterboxd. Casey picked a movie. We watched Spy for the first time. The comedy with Melissa McCarthy and Jude Law, Jason Statham. It was silly. It was funny. I actually gave it 4 stars because I was pleasantly surprised in how funny it was.
Wow.
And then thanks to Disney Plus and their Zenimation, I rewatched Treasure Planet for the first time in a long time. They showed some shots in a couple of their shorts And I was just like, I got to see this again. And man, that movie was a treat. Ahead of its time with the CG and the 2D animation. And had an amazing score too. And I love the story. I would love to actually for them to revisit it somehow with a live action or, I don't know, something else.
Yeah, when you logged that review, I think I just totally forgot about the movie. I'd never seen it, so I decided to fire it up one day this past week with James, my son, and I don't know why, but he stayed in the room for the most part of that movie. I think like 99% of that movie. So we watched it together, and I'd never seen it before, but I'd love to see a making of documentary just because of how they mixed in computer generated animation on a 2D character. Like, and I had trouble kind of like wrapping my head around it. Like, this looked like such a pain in the ass to have to animate.
Yeah, it had to have been.
Because that one main pirate, he had like CG cyborg pieces in his head that were CG, but the rest of him was 2D. Yeah. Just like my brain couldn't comprehend the amount of work that went into that.
There's a couple of shots where they're running through a hall and it's the camera's following them and it's like the hall is CG, but the 2D animation running through it is so fluid and it's really impressive actually that they did it so long ago.
Same directors as Aladdin, Moana, Princess and the Frog, and what was their other one? Little Mermaid. So pretty stacked team doing that movie.
Yeah, it wasn't well received then. And I think it got overshadowed with Atlantis stuff. But yeah, I like Treasure Planet. It's pretty good.
Proto, what's your favorite Disney animated movie?
Oh man, I don't think I have one ready off the top of my head. I don't know.
You have to go by like eras.
Yeah.
The 2D era, the Disney Studios era.
Brother Bear. Is it Brother Bear?
Stop. Don't you knock Brother Bear. That is an underrated Disney movie.
Brother Bear. I just remember that voice.
When you were talking about Treasure Planet, it made me think of that era. And there's Treasure Planet, and then there's Atlantis. But one of my favorite that isn't a Disney movie is Prince of Egypt that came out around that time. And I love
the music in that. Holy cow.
The music is amazing.
What is it? It's like Whitney, Mariah Carey.
Excuse me?
Dude, that Deliver Us, the beginning of that movie.
Are we doing Prince of Egypt for this podcast as a bonus episode?
I'm down.
It's powerful.
Is Proto getting excited for the second time in this podcast history right now?
Oh my.
Holy moly. Let's do the Prince 10 Commandments right after that.
No.
With
and Bible month.
And Passion of the Christ.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. Holy cow. We need to get into Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby is our featured presentation this week. Let's get into it. People demand it. They've been chomping at the bit on IG and Twitter, especially during Proto's live streams. Guide us, please.
Rosemary's Baby is a descent into the bowels of solitude. Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse have moved into an apartment in New York City's Bramford building. Their neighbors are a nosy and peculiar bunch who make strange noises at night and can't mind their own business. The Woodhouses make a new home for themselves, and all that is left for Rosemary is to have a baby. But what strange dreams she is having. And that prenatal drink has a weird aftertaste. And those pregnancy pains she is feeling, is that normal? Rosemary thinks something is wrong. Something wrong with her neighbors, her doctor, her husband, her baby, but no one seems to be listening. Maybe everything is okay. Or maybe something beyond her imagination is happening to her.
Lord have mercy.
1968, Mia Farrow, John Cassavetes, and a slew of other amazing actors. I've seen this movie. This is a movie that I've seen at a young age, maybe my time in college or high school, around when I was working in a video store. So I've had this movie on a very high list for a very long time. This is the first time I've seen it in a while, though. Have you ever seen this movie before?
No, this is my first time, but it's a movie I've heard about a lot. and something that I've wanted to see for a while. So I was so excited when we put this on the list.
Danny, how are you feeling getting ready to watch another horror movie, albeit a 1968 horror movie? What was your emotions going into this?
Knowing everybody's thoughts on this movie, I was really excited to watch it. I had never seen it. And then diving into all the horror that I did last year, it had been one I'd been wanting to see for a while. So I'm glad we did it.
I had also recently watched Polanski's Chinatown, and I really enjoyed that and the way that was directed. So I was excited to watch another one of his movies for that reason.
How about the font or logo mark of the original movie titles and everything to start this movie? How beautiful was that stuff? Pink?
The pink on the city skylines with that music going. I mean, I loved it. I loved the intro so much, especially when they pan over, I guess, what's the building called? The Bramford? Is that what it's called? Just the tops of that building with the, like that rust teal color on top of the spires and the architecture on that top of that building, that apartment building was unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the song at the start, I just wrote it down. It sounded like a twisted nursery rhyme. And it just totally sets the mood for the movie. And really, of course, it's called Rosemary's Baby. So you kind of maybe know where it's leading to, but it just really sets the tone.
It kind of sounds like Mia too. Like I want to believe it's Mia singing that little tune.
It is her.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I read that it was. She sang that.
Holy cow!
Oh my gosh!
Imagine walking through your house at like 2 a.m. with no lights on, hearing that in like the corner of your house.
Yeah, it's a good intro.
Oh, mama!
Definitely sets the tone.
One of the first notes that I have on this rewatch is, they start out their Rosemary and Guy. He's kind of like a sort of up-and-coming actor. He's been in a few commercials, but hasn't really hit anything big. They're looking at an apartment to move into. I was so full of dread of having to potentially move into this apartment and moving all of their belongings into this small elevator, walking up these stairs. That was like more horrifying to me than anything in the early part of this movie. I just dread moving, and especially in like a New York City apartment. I don't know how people do it. It just makes my skin crawl in general.
Yeah, the amount of stuff that was already in there, and then knowing, you have to furnish this whole place. And there's a lot of sequences early on where you see them furnishing it, like buying stuff and painting, and you really see them kind of make it their own. But it's an amazing apartment.
Huge.
Like, yeah,
it's like a house.
Yeah, it's so cool.
So they're getting shown around this apartment. It's gorgeous. And I kind of really love the bit players in this movie. Like the guy showing them the apartment, almost like a character actor in this movie. Just, he's very much a separate character than anyone on screen. And I think that's one of my favorite things about this movie is I feel like a lot of the other characters, like this, Saperstein, the doctor, the neighbors, and pretty much anyone else almost in the cult, they're not like super over the top characters, but they're just very defined and very different than one another. And that was one of the things that kind of jumped out at me on this viewing. I wanted to see more of these characters on screen, which is very full featured, very hard to do with these kind of random characters.
Yeah, that is true. Even one of the members of the cult that live in the building, she has the glasses and she's like a more full figured, and there's a scene where she comes over with Minnie and they sit down on their couch and she's knitting, and just the way she like moved and laughed was so distinct, and it felt like it gave you so much information about this character, but she's not in that many scenes, but it gave her a lot of depth. And it's like that with most of the characters in this movie.
Yeah.
It's really well written.
There was another scene that I wrote down where they're having dinner in the empty apartment, and this scene cracked me up, but
Hey, let's make love.
And it was like one of the most unromantic requests to have intercourse with your wife. And I wrote in my notes, is like, is this how people had sex in 1968? Like, that's so weird. And there's like a minute long scene of them just undressing fast. And then it goes to the next scene.
Oh, man. Speaking of character, when they're painting their house the white color, one of my notes is, why is this guy painting like that? Because he had like this giant brush, and he's just like
he's going so fast,
painting the wall so fast. He's got paint on his face, splattering. I was just like, what is he doing? You don't paint like this.
How about even the wallpaper? They're wallpapering the other walls too. Oh. What a lost art that is now. Parker, do you have wallpaper in your home?
No, I don't, but I heard that's coming back, actually.
Really?
They're doing the whole
Casey just asked me to wallpaper this area in our kitchen.
What? I didn't know this was coming back.
Yeah.
Believe it.
You guys are going to be done wallpapering that wall. You're going to be eating leftover pizza on the floor, and you're going to be like, hey, let's make love.
I would,
and then you're slow. You're going to dress for 2 minutes.
Turtle
straight.
on my back, trying to get my jeans off, like I'm flipped over on my shell.
Well, it is 1968, right? They don't have much else to do. It's like they're not going to be scrolling through Instagram.
Yeah,
they're not flipping on the TV.
Yeah,
yeah. You eat dinner.
You just go at it.
They talk about how their the apartment was converted. I think it was a larger, or they put up a wall that wasn't there before, so they can kind of hear their neighbors pretty distinctly. Like if I was paying that much money for that kind of size apartment, I mean, I have no idea what they're paying, but I'd be pretty PO'd if I could hear my neighbors that clearly. And their neighbors are the Castavets, this older couple. They have a young gal that they've taken under their wing who I think was like a drug addict, vagrant. And so Rosemary meets her in the laundry room. They're chatting. She seems pretty normal. And then the next thing she knows, like later that night or the next day, that young girl killed herself and jumped out the window, and she left a suicide note. And the Castavets, the older couple, walk up and they all kind of see this, and they're like, quote, shocked that she would do this. And that opens the door up for them to take Rosemary under their wing. So they start knocking on her door. They start like inviting them over for meals. And at first you just think they're kind of like annoying neighbors, just like super annoying older neighbors, like seniors. But eventually it starts to unfurl this bigger picture. What did you guys think of the elderly neighbors that eventually were revealed to have been in this darker sect?
I found the wife quite annoying, actually, to the point where she just got under my skin a bit, and I think maybe it worked for her character. But it was very apparent when she first sees the body of the girl that jumped out of the window that she doesn't care.
You folks, the Castavets on the 7th floor?
We are?
You have a young woman named Teresa Giannoffrio living with you?
We do. What's wrong? Has there been an accident?
You'd better brace yourself for some bad news. She's dead. Jumped out of the window.
That's not possible. That's a mistake.
Artie, want to let these folks take a look, please?
I knew this would happen. She got deeply depressed every 3 weeks or so. I told my wife about it, but she poo-pooed me.
Well, it doesn't mean she killed herself. She's a very happy girl with no reason for self-destruction. She must have been cleaning the windows or something.
She wasn't cleaning windows at midnight.
Why not? Maybe she was.
Is that her handwriting?
Definitely, absolutely.
She's kind of shocked, but I never felt like instantly, like, oh, something's up, because they're not acting like this person that they have taken off the streets and helped get back on their feet. And she jumped out a window, and it's like, well, nah, it can't be true. She was washing the windows at midnight or something. Like,
right. It
was very weird the way that she reacted to the suicide. So I had a feeling then that something was up with them. But yeah, she annoyed me. I like the dad a lot, or the husband,
Roman.
Yeah, he's really creepy, like super creepy. And I like how he carried himself in this movie.
Minnie is pretty annoying in this movie.
Yeah.
But she had some great lines. And just the way she would say things. Come over and have supper with us. What do you say? And then when they're at dinner and they're having dessert, the way she was eating that cake,
Oh my God.
as if she had like 10 seconds to eat the whole slice, just downing it. Amazing. I took a few screenshots of that. Amazing moment. But so they don't really explain it why she commits suicide. But after watching the whole movie, I assume that they were grooming her to bear the baby as well. But then when Rosemary came along, they shifted gears and then had her commit suicide by doing the thing they do with, like, you know, forcing people to end their lives.
Amanda asked me that same question when we're done, but there's a scene that Rosemary has a dream, very odd dream sequence with the nuns, and the nuns are speaking to her. I think one of the nuns says, we never should have told her our plan, or we never should have brought her into the fold. Something along those lines. And I feel like that was Minnie. Or is it Minnie or Winnie?
I think it's Minnie.
Minnie. I think that was Minnie talking, and she was hearing her through the walls, and that came into her dream.
So and he was bricking up the windows.
Yeah, I gathered that she got wind of the plan, and she didn't want any part of it. At least that's my interpretation.
And that's what I assume what happens with the person in their apartment that they take over the apartment for, because there's that note where she just writes down, I can no longer associate myself.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that maybe she's trying to leave the cult, and then they have her kill or have her die as well.
Yeah. And for anyone that hasn't seen it, the Castavets are, you don't know this at the time, but they are slowly grooming Rosemary to bear Satan's child. And it slowly starts with they get invited for dinner with the Castavets, and they're kind of like, oh God, I don't want to have dinner with these neighbors. Like, I also would be in the same spot. Like, I don't want to have dinner with you. I'm just going to stay in my apartment. But Guy finds out that, you know, allegedly Roman is connected kind of in the acting world, or he has many connections that could potentially help him. Or at least that's what he tells Guy at the onset of this dinner. So he starts to be more interested in hanging out with them, which is against what Rosemary is into. So she would rather stay home. And eventually, over time, you know, Guy starts to become more friendly with them. And then he says in another scene that's just so very dry, you know, let's have a baby. He said it like, I think he came home from work. He's like, let's have a baby. And she's stoked. That's like the one thing she's wanted. She finally gets it. So she's like, you know, over the moon about this. And one night they get drunk. They plan to kind of do it. You know, as you do in 1968, you make a plan. We're going to have sex after dinner. It's going to be amazing.
Baby night.
Baby night.
And she gets a little too drunk. She gets pissed because the neighbor knocks on the door. She's like, oh God, these dumb neighbors are going to ruin everything. But they're only dropping off like some mocha frappuccinos for you.
The mousse.
The chocolate mousse, which essentially drugs Rosemary. And she passes out on the couch, and she has this pseudo dream where she sees, you know, like 15 older people in her apartment that are fully nude, and someone is like encroaching on her naked body over the bed. And it's like this creature with like dark red eyes or whatever. And she sees Guy there also. It's like this weird dream sequence. And during this entire time, the character is like, she's awake. She sees us. And they're like, no, she's out of it. What did you guys think of that scene? 1968, this happens.
I mean, the whole dream sequence is amazing. It's maybe 5 minutes long.
It's long.
It's very long. And it starts also with her being on a ship. There's very like surreal elements to it that make it feel very much like a dream, where it is, I guess you could say, she's dreaming, but also seeing what's actually happening at the same time, and they're intertwined. And it's done so well. I actually went back and watched that scene because it's really the pivotal moment in the movie. And it's just so compelling. Just how it's shot and just how it feels disorienting in the way that dreams are. So I thought it was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like the surrealness was her dream sequence, but I feel like the people around her was actually happening. I feel like they came in like they kind of do at the end of the movie. I feel like they were around her while she was passed out, and when John or Guy, whatever his name was, actually rapes her or whatever. I feel like that's actually happening, but she's seeing it different in her dream. So I feel like they are there.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. They're all in there buck naked watching John.
I don't know if they were naked, but
I like to think they were.
Well, then also at the beginning they do who's talking about it? Oh, I think they have a meeting with their friend Hutch early on, and he describes things that went on at the Bramford. And one thing that he says is that the one guy who was like in charge of chased out of the building for being a Satanist had managed to summon Satan in the basement. So I assume that like that's where they went. They went to the basement of the building, the same place.
Interesting. I didn't even catch that. She wakes up the next morning after this happens, really drowsy, and she realizes that she has scratch marks on her back in the same places that this creature, scratched her as it was forcing itself on her. And Guy is like, oh, yeah, that was me. I got a little rough last night. You were drunk, but felt like it was the right time. How unsettling was that conversation? Rosemary is essentially told that her husband has raped her, and he just passes it off as like, you know what? It happened.
One of the creepiest lines I've ever heard in my life. He says,
And it was kind of fun in a necrophile sort of way.
what?
yeah, I wanted to crawl into my skin when he said that.
Oh my God.
Right after he said he cut his fingernails, just after he realized he scratched her so much.
That scene, and I mean, it speaks to, you could say the whole movie really speaks to the era about how like not in control she was at all during this entire process. But man, that scene is repulsive, just totally repulsive. His entire demeanor and explanation as to what he wants her to think happened, that it was him and not Satan having sex with her against her will. What I really liked around the second viewing is it had been so long that I couldn't remember if there was really, for the majority of the movie, it's played off that like, maybe she is dreaming. Maybe she is just not there. Like this could be all in her head and she's having like an episode. Like his explanations, Guy's explanations kind of make a little bit of sense. Like he got lucky with some of his acting gigs because this dude went blind. That happens. Sure. Mysteriously, guy goes blind. He got more acting gigs. And her new doctor that she was talked into doing says the stomach pain she's having is normal. Don't worry. I liked that part where like she is struggling with whether or not it's real. Because if you think you've been assaulted by Satan, like how do you share that information with people? Like you're going to be looked at like a crazy person, no matter how you shake it. So then later it kind of gets busted open where she has a party with some of her of age friends that she just hasn't seen since they moved into this apartment, her girlfriends. And they're like, man, you are really thin. Because they haven't seen her in, I don't know, like by this point, at least a couple months or a year. And she tells them that she's been having these crazy stomach pains for like months. And they all freak out that like, this is not normal, you having this stomach pain. And they like lock the door to have this conversation with her. They lock Guy out so he can't be a part of it. I thought that was an amazing scene, that whole thing.
Right after Vidal Sassoon butchered her hair.
How about everyone crapping on her haircut? I thought she looks
hair
amazing.
So hard.
Oh, God.
Yeah. A guy says the worst mistake you ever made. Maybe not the thing to say to your wife.
It was terrible.
Yeah, that is an amazing scene. That is really like the one moment where she has somebody, some women totally on her side and who are there to help her. Because really, well, I guess there's also Hutch who's trying to help. But at this point, I think he's in a coma and no longer in the picture.
Yeah, poor Hutch.
Yeah, there's no one else in her life that can help her. She is totally alone. She's trapped in this with her husband and these neighbors. And it's really terrifying. And you said, this is your rewatch. All of these things, even thinking about Guy, and just knowing that, just going back to him having this conversation with Roman, because there's a moment where Rosemary's in the kitchen with Minnie and they're doing the dishes, and then she comes out and Guy is very engaged with this conversation. And after you watch the whole movie, you think like, oh, maybe he's telling him that like he can help him here. And then he goes another night and has another meeting, and you're thinking, oh, maybe he was like, because at some point he introduces the idea that if you let us impregnate your wife with Satan's, child, we'll give you everything you want. And then he goes for it. So that happened at some point where he's on their team. And it's so terrifying to think that this husband was on their side and really deceiving his wife through the whole movie.
Hutch eventually, you mentioned Hutch. He does kind of do some research on Roman, the neighbor, because he meets, oh my God, that scene where Hutch meets Roman. I'm not sure if you took note of it, but Roman walks in when she's having a visit with Hutch. She invites Roman to come in and sit down. They both sit across from each other the first time they met. Roman does not take his eyes off Hutch the entire 2-minute shot. Oh my God, it was so amazing. He just stares at him the whole time because he can almost like sense that Hutch is going to be a problem. Like he doesn't buy any of this. We need to deal with him. Oh my God, what an amazing scene that was.
Yeah, he was onto him.
And Hutch, right before he dies, he sends a book of witchcraft that he, I think he saw Roman before, or he eventually did some research after meeting Roman and finds that Roman's like grandfather or whatever was in this book and was a Satanist into witchcraft. And he sends this book to her, which kind of, pushes her along the path of potentially thinking it's all real.
Yeah, I like all the little, especially with that book when he gives them, because she has to do the anagram. But when she flips through it, you see the drawing of what I think it was his father, because I think he's photographed in there as a 13-year-old.
Oh yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
And she says he has his eyes or whatever. But the sketch of his father with his arm up is also in her dream sequence as the actual guy posing for the photo. Mm. And then it's also the painting above the mantle at the end. Which I love the like breadcrumbs. Like you can piece so much to this movie. Like when she first enters that dream sequence, it's got the burning church. And then when she first enters their apartment through the cupboard or the hall closet, the painting on the right is the burning church. That's the first thing she sees as well. So there's so much I love about this, the little tidbits.
That first meeting with them too, she even makes a note that like, did you notice that like there was pictures missing from the walls? And
yeah,
exactly. Painting is just not hanging anymore. Do you think anything of that guy? And he's like, nah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my notes about this in the way things are slowly uncovered, because as you get further into the movie, Rosemary starts catching on to things and she starts suspecting people one after another. And I thought of this as kind of like an inverted detective story where you have, instead of not knowing who the criminal is, you like know the viewer knows who it is off the bat. And the victim is actually the detective. And it's not one person, it's everybody else is in on it except for them.
Yeah.
So like she's slowly piecing it together, and the crime, well, I guess the crime happens early on where she's like raped by Satan, but also she doesn't really discover that until the end. And the fact that everyone else in her life is in on it except for her. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Her uncovering Dr. Saperstein, her new doctor, she realizes he's actually in on it too, because he has that same kind of like scent that the Castevets gave her and that charm. So she runs out into traffic to try to get a hold of her original doctor. And I was on the wiki earlier, that scene where she runs out into New York traffic, like in between the cars, they said that was like a real scene, that they actually just had her go into traffic, and Polanski had like a steady cam or whatever and ran into traffic with her. He's like,
holy
cow. You have a bump, you have a pregnancy bump, no one's going to hit you. Like, let's just run and quick do this. Can you imagine? That's insane.
Oh my gosh.
She goes to find her original doctor. He sees her. Also, that phone booth scene is intense, that whole long take. And during the process of her talking to a doctor, someone walks behind her in the booth, and you think that that's like Roman, but it just turns out to be a random dude. Oh my God, what a shot that was. So good. And then her original doctor gives her up. He calls Saperstein and her husband. She thinks she's going to be saved, but...
Yeah, at that point, it's over. It's, because he's the one guy outside of all this that could help her. He has some kind of authority. She's in the safety of his office. And that when he leads her to the room and then says it'll be 30 minutes and locks the door on the way out, and you're just like, no, like just sense of dread that, man, he's, she's not getting any of the help she needs.
And she was so happy too when she like laid down. She's like, "Oh God, it's over. All this is finished." God, so it's terrible.
Yeah, and then when she sees the doctor and her husband come in, she doesn't even put up any kind of fight. It's like she's so shocked that she is now back, like captured by them, that she like just gives up. There's nothing that she can do at this point. It's so sad to see.
She eventually goes through labor. They tell her, or Guy and Saperstein say that the baby died. We can try again in the future. So she's like distraught at this and also doesn't believe it. So she eventually goes around to where that secretary was in that closet, across in the closet, and decides to go through this time. She like finds this doorway that was there. She goes through and she sees all these people celebrating, drinking champagne and wine around this black crib with, black satin or whatever. And she grabs a knife and she just freaks the F out. This is one of my like all-time favorite movies, or one of my all-time favorite scenes, where they reveal to her,
What have you done to him, you maniac?
Satan is his father, not Guy. He came up from hell and begat a son of mortal woman. Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!
Satan is his father, and his name is Adrian. He shall overthrow the mighty and lay waste their temples. He shall redeem the despised and wreak vengeance in the name of the burned and the tortured. Hail Adrian! Hail Adrian! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
He chose you out of all the world, out of all the women in the whole world. He chose you. He arranged things because he wanted you to be the mother of his only living son.
His power is stronger than stronger.
Satan!
His might shall last longer than longer. Yes, Satan!
I mean, the scene is crazy. Like, they all reveal that it was a scam. Like, you had sex with Satan, Rosemary. We did this, and you're his mother. And then she goes over to the crib to look, and they don't even show the baby. They just show her reaction, which is an amazing shot. And they don't even like really do anything to harm her at this point. They're like, "You're more than welcome to mother this child. This child needs a mother, and that's you." They don't try to kill her or anything. They just let her roam free in this room.
And then they allude to that, like, "Hey, this baby's going to need someone to nurse it, and our other members are a little too old. So what do you say, Rosemary? You want to nurse the Antichrist?"
Yeah, the shot of her seeing the baby is probably the best shot of her in the movie. Her reaction to seeing his eyes, she's carrying that thin line, that knife too. It's so great. I actually love the scene before that when she's getting the knife and she's kind of tiptoeing through her apartment, and it's kind of dark-ish, and she's got that flowing nightgown on, and Guy comes in to get what looks like an ice bucket, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But she's hiding in that darkness with it's just the shot of the light coming on and hitting her in the face, and the lead up to that scene was great too.
It's just such a crazy way to end the movie, with her being put in just an even more untenable position. Like, we took what you wanted, but you're more than welcome to be the mother of Satan's child if you want. She is like forced to make that decision, and then does, because that lady that you mentioned earlier with the glasses is like rocking the baby so fast, and she's like, she even tells her like, "You're doing it too fast, stop." And they welcome her over to then rock the baby's crib herself, and then the music hits again, the like crazy lullaby music, and then that's the end of the movie. Rosemary's
Gosh,
Baby.
that slow pan to her face when she's like slowly deciding to mother the child. La, 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 la. Also, she sticks her tongue out at her when she walks by her too. The lady that was rocking.
Hilarious.
I want to smack her so hard.
What about the scene where, did you make note of the scene where she cooks that steak for like 2 seconds and then eats it? What was going on there? Is that safe?
And then she eats the innards of that turkey. Oh, and she sees herself in the side of the toaster.
Her diet was very strange in this movie.
I think that's like hinting at, in pregnancy, women can have crazy cravings, but this is like, well, you have Satan's child, so you're going to want raw meat.
That's true. I didn't even think of that.
But I didn't say it outright, but man, Mia Farrow in this is amazing.
Yeah.
She is just so good. And you just love her. She's so adorable. Her costumes are amazing as well. She has this amazing plaid skirt early on. Just looked so good. This movie has so much style to it as well. Every set, like their apartment's amazing. That whole building is amazing. But I even made note of Hutch's office where she goes to meet him, or she goes to pick up the book there, or there's something that happens at his office. I can't remember. I think maybe she goes there. But his office is amazing. Just like there's so much just detail. It feels so lived in. That aspect of the movie I loved.
Yeah, one of my notes with the design of the movie was there was so much yellow used, and I was trying to see why. Like I didn't look it up yet, but there's so much yellow. Her bedspread, her dresses, the wall colorings, the dress that she packs in the suitcase is a yellow dress. Like I don't know if there was something to that I was missing, but there's so much yellow, and all the yellow is like her choice for a lot of the stuff. So I was trying to figure that out as well.
Any other scenes that you had in your notes before we?
Why? How many times does John slap Mia's ass in this movie?
I didn't even notice that.
He's always hitting her ass. What's with all the yellow? And then his line, let's have a baby. Let's have 3, 1 at a time. I was so bothered by that line.
Was that before or after the saint when he joined the cult, you think? Was that like a cult request? Let's have 3 babies, 3 Satan babies?
I don't know.
How many Satan babies can you
Also,
have?
every scene with the needle was unsettling. The way they stuck it in her arm. Almost looked real, actually.
Hutch.
I love the anagram scene as well, where she's trying to figure it out. There was like a lot of tension because I kept thinking that someone was going to come in to the room while she was figuring that out. So I kept waiting for like Roman to appear or Guy to come back and see that she was doing this. And just the way that, it goes on for a while where she thinks it's the title that is the anagram. I think what's the book? All of them witches. Yeah, she thinks that's the anagram, and then she kind of gives up. She takes like 4 or 5 attempts, and then she thinks, "Oh, it's his name," and she realizes that it spells out to the guy who was previously, or the name of the son of the guy who owned or was in the building before, the Satanist, and that's where she kind of puts it together. But there's like a big almost like release in that moment, but just also like very scary. And it's just her it's almost scary that she figured it out in that moment of who Roman was. And it scared me watching it.
Yeah, I do love that scene. I do, because the assistant of Hutch says the name is an anagram. And so she keeps thinking the title of the book is what she's playing at. And I love that the book is called All of Them Witches, or All of Them Witches, because it's true. Because it's like, that's exactly right. They're all witches, but that's not what she has to solve. It's like in her face, but I like that.
There was a few lines in the book that talked about, I can't remember, I didn't write it down, but it talks about like mental, I'm not sure if you made note of it. It was like mental powers, but like using the strength of a coven's thoughts to force someone to do something. I love just reading those sentences. Like it just sounded very strange and mysterious and, evil, just like seeing it in that book. I thought it was pretty cool.
That was another element of this that was really cool, which is how they would affect people. And they do it to 3 or 4 characters in the movie where they get an item from them and then they can force them to become ill in some way. Or when Rosemary has that phone conversation with the actor that goes blind and she fishes for information, and like her worst fear comes true. And that's how she figures out that Guy is involved in it, because she's like, you left something with him, right? And she doesn't know this, but she says that, and he's like, oh yeah, we swapped ties. And then you just see it, like the color drain from her face. And she's like, oh my God, Guy's in on it. It's an amazing scene.
I also read on the wiki too that the actor that played that character over the phone was Tony Curtis, and Mia didn't know who was going to be on the other side of that phone call. So her reaction and like mannerisms during that phone call of like maybe knowing who this person is was genuine. And apparently that was just all a real shot. Pretty cool.
Interesting.
All right, Proto, what's your overall vibe? Rosemary's Baby, horror movie. You set the stage earlier in the show about how you feel sometimes unsettled. Let's hear it.
Well, for me, this is my kind of horror movie because it's more leaning towards the psychological thriller aspect of it as well. So I really love this. I enjoyed it the whole way through. It was so fun. It's so well written. I want to read the book now as well. I think I read that. I think this was made the year after the book came out. So it was like a really quick turnaround. I think that's what I read, which seems crazy that you would make a movie about a book a year later. But I love this. And one thing I loved about it, we didn't really hit on it too much, is just like the feminist aspect of this, of how really, Rosemary is attempted to be controlled by her husband and other characters throughout this whole movie. And she doesn't have much autonomy. And it's kind of her fighting for that through this whole movie. And I think that's what makes the one scene so powerful, as well as when she's with her younger friends locked in the kitchen and they're the only ones who are really giving her good advice. And she almost does what she needs to do with getting a different doctor, but then the pains go away and that kind of sets her on a different path. But there's, in a lot of ways, this feels like a really, a great feminist critique of the time. So I love that aspect of it. I feel like this movie would be amazing on a rewatch, because even as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wow, so many scenes have so much more weight now. And I think, meaning that it's a very rewatchable movie. So I really enjoyed it. I give it 4 stars.
My goodness. Wow.
Danny, lay it on us.
So yeah, going into last year with all the horror rewatching I was doing, I said in the beginning that this was on the list. And I saw all the reviews of friends and stuff on Letterboxd so high, 4 and 5 stars. So I was very excited to get into this. My first watch was a few days ago. Went in expecting a horror movie, and I was actually very bored. And I feel like I didn't get it. Like I wasn't understanding why this was such a revered movie. It's on so many lists as one of the best horror movies of all time. So I expected something scarier, I think, or Omen level horror. So then I gave it a second rewatch, going at it from the aspect of more of a suspenseful thriller, knowing what's to come, knowing that there's more in the backgrounds to be looking for. And I think the second time I liked it a lot more, knowing what to expect with it. There's some excellent scenes the lighting in it is quite perfect. Some shots of her in the apartment. But ultimately, this kind of falls flat for me as a horror movie, as a suspenseful movie. I like bits of it, but I can't give it more than 3 stars.
Is this because of my Hamilton comment from earlier in the show?
It has to be.
I take everything into consideration.
What was the rating before your second viewing? 2 stars?
It was barely 2 stars.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. And maybe another watch. Because I honestly think what Proto said is right. This probably deserves multiple watches, especially when you talk about that dream sequence scene. There's so much in that's being thrown at you that I feel like could tell more of the story. I don't know.
Danny, you never have to apologize to me on this podcast.
I'm not apologizing.
You never have to do that. Stop.
Apologize
right now.
It's okay.
I appreciate
3
your
stars
candor.
is good. I did not hate it.
3 stars is fine.
I didn't hate it.
It's fine.
Mia's amazing in it. I
Vision.
thought Cassavetes sucked. He annoyed me the most out of this on the whole movie.
My original rating on Letterboxd. So this is one of those movies that I had a rating for originally, and it was 5 stars when I rated it before. And then when I rewatched it, I thought I removed that rating just so I didn't want to like tip my hat too much, but it didn't work. So Danny, when we're playing Apex the other night, he's like, "Oh, I saw your 5-star rating on Rosemary's Baby," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" So I screwed up. I didn't remove it in time. However, this still is a 5-star movie for me. I think I've said on previous episodes, I love this era of filmmaking, in New York City, slow boil. I think those are very hard to do now in today's filmmaking, but this is 2-hour plus movie. A lot of conversations, just real, genuine interactions between people and lovers and neighbors, and the sense of dread that slowly festers over time, and the reveal is just magic for me. It still is a perfect movie for me. I love the ending scene so much when they're celebrating the birth of that child. It's just so trippy. And this movie is in a lot of modern day, devil-related horror movies. I'm not going to say what movies modern day that take a lot of this stuff, because I totally forgot a lot of these scenes are almost like totally copied in movies that I love that have come out recently. So this set the stage for, the modern slow boil horror in many ways. And I mean, even when I watched Mother for the first time this past year, and I was like, why does a lot of this seem very familiar to me? But yeah, 5-star movie for me, Rosemary's Baby. It is on one of the top horror film lists, but Danny's, I think, right in that it's not a jump scare horror movie. This is kind of one of those psychological boils over time. So
I was getting Midsummer vibes too, a lot, especially in the dream sequence. Almost an exact scene from Midsummer.
Yeah, I think that director, I have no idea to back this up, but I feel like he's been inspired by Rosemary's Baby a lot.
I could see that, how it can be inspiring. A lot of great shots in this movie.
Okay. There you have it. Next week's Batman 1989. I'm just going to reiterate next week. It could be a 4-hour episode at this point. We might have to do 2-parter.
Double VHS.
We're, as of this timestamp, we're at 1 hour, 10 minutes. Who knows where it actually is going to be when we cut things down. But we got to get into some voicemails. 267-409-6983. Or if you want to write us a letter or send an audio file, you can do so at 70mmpod@gmail.com. And we got a letter, actually. Speak of the devil. Well, not the devil.
Please don't.
We got an email from John. That's not a reference to John. I don't know John, but I just making a connection. Please do Independence Day for your podcast around 4th of July. I will tell you anything you want to know about Danny. Nervous emoji. That's a great idea.
John's my BFF forever since 5th grade. So he knows a lot.
Can you imagine, Proto, will you tell us right now on this episode that you will do an Independence Day bonus episode for the 4th of July?
As I've said in the past, I don't get to pick the movies that we do. I just watch them. We need to. If we're watching one of maybe Will Smith's best performance.
Wow.
Oh, I'm in.
You're in. Okay. I think we need to get together in 70mm HQ, VHS Village offices. And we need to get Proto to present us an updated spreadsheet of his movies that he's added to that list of his picks. I think he's finished the Herzog library. I don't know if there's any Herzog movies left, but we need to look at what Proto wants to do on this podcast before this gets any deeper. This conspiracy.
I mean, is that the biggest? Is Independence Day the biggest 4th of July movie out there?
There's Born on the 4th of July.
We're not allowed to do that.
That was good.
Backstory, I do a podcast about the retrospective filmography of Tom Cruise. It's called Interview with the Podcast Vampire. And if I were to do a Tom Cruise movie on this podcast, I would get deleted out of my own Slack. From
do we have to do a special, just the two of us?
If you wanted to do a bonus episode, the two of you.
Oh, my.
I'll be out on assignment that episode. All right,
someone's got to edit it, though.
Yeah. Proto, fire up those YouTube tutorials on logic editing. All right, next email. Coming in hot. We got a few of them.
Hello, 70mm community. This is Mikey P. Just wanted to say how grateful I was that I was mentioned by name on your fine broadcast. but I just wanted to bring up something about this movie that I'm somehow attached to. I wasn't upset with Danny with his rating of this movie, Rocky. It was my problem was the rating he gave it before he watched the movie, calling it trash.
Wow.
And Daniel, we should never call something trash before we experience it. Like my kids, who they say they're not going to like something for dinner, and I still make them try it before they say they don't like it. I would think as a father of 13 kids yourself, you would feel the same way. When you say something is trash before knowing it, I got, to quote Proto's wife, Channing Tatum vibes, whatever that means. But, it got me to thinking, what are the movies that you have judged beforehand, didn't think you would like it, but ended up liking it? For me, like Solo, I kept hearing bad things. I wasn't sure how I felt about what I saw in the trailer. I saw this movie. I enjoyed it. I've watched it 2 or 3 times since then. It's enjoyable. It caught me by surprise. So, Daniel, on behalf of myself, I just wanted to say you're welcome for helping you become a better moviegoer and person. Also, Wedding Singer is pretty good. Love you, bye.
Thank you for your bravery, Michael.
I don't have a rebuttal to that. I'm sorry, Mikey.
Maybe the voice.
And I'm not allowed to apologize on this podcast, but I am sorry to Michael.
I mean,
I don't know if I have a movie that I judge more beforehand than, I guess, Rocky. Maybe we should listen to these messages beforehand.
Proto, any comments on Mikey P's thoughts on Wedding Singer specifically?
I got to watch that. I haven't seen it. I have no feelings towards that. It might be my favorite Adam Sandler movie. Just give it a chance.
That's the one you do with Matt alone.
Thanks for the call, Mikey P. We have another hot one coming in here.
What is up, 70 millimeter podcast? It's Andy from Orlando. And I just wanted to call in. I know you guys are reviewing Rosemary's Baby this week, and so I watched it. And you have to know ahead of time, A, I'm not the biggest fan of horror movies, and B, regardless of the genre, I like my movies to have a happy ending. And so again, this movie was good. I gave it 3 stars on Letterboxd, and I thought it was good, but the way it ended was rough. I did not enjoy it. It reminded me of Hereditary. And then it also reminded me a little bit of Get Out, with just, this sense of not being able to trust everyone in the film, and our main character being the victim. And so it definitely had vibes of Get Out. If anything, those 2 films were probably inspired by Rosemary's Baby, and so I can appreciate it for that. But yeah, overall, it was a good film. I probably won't watch it again, but I know it's a pretty historical, important horror movie, and so I'm glad I watched it. So I just can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on the film, and looking forward to all the episodes that are coming out. Super pumped. And again, thank you guys for doing this podcast. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Andy only liking happy endings is starting to really shed some light on his feelings towards Rogue One.
Andy, you may not like movies ending on a down note, but think about this. Rosemary's Baby, no matter how you slice it, being the mother of Satan's child is kind of a big deal. So, I mean, it's kind of a down note, but it's kind of like an up note too. Like, it's like, oh, disappointing, but also, I mean, she seemed kind of happy at the end. So, it's just my interpretation.
Did Andy and Danny collude before this episode was recorded? Do you think they were exchanging DMs on IG before this took place?
Who can say?
I got a screenshot of Andy's Letterboxd rating in a DM. Almost no comments. He just sent me the rating.
Oh my!
Right away.
Did he send it just to you? That's what we need to know.
That's a real good question. That's a real good question.
Can't speak for Andy.
Andy's talked about her upcoming slate of movies. Just to remind the villagers, after Batman, Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, we're trying real hard to get in touch with his people. Real hard. If you are on Twitter, if you're on IG and you want to @ him, with a link to our show, telling him about this campaign, please do so. We want to reach out. We want to connect. Jaws after that. Are you kidding me? We got something special cooked up for that episode. Don't you worry about it.
Someone at Richard Dreyfuss, please.
The 70mm podcast. Yeah, I've heard about that. We got another voicemail coming up.
What is up, 70mm? This is Ian, longtime listener, first-time caller, and I just want to start off this voicemail. I acknowledge I was a little aggressive in my last voicemail about Phantom Thread and Daniel Day-Lewis and how incorrect Slim was in his interpretation of Daniel Day-Lewis's acting performance in Phantom Thread. But I can bear the hatchet. I'm fine. Slim and I discussed privately. We're over it. So I do want to apologize to the VHS Villagers, the loyal fan base of this amazing podcast for what I did. However, last week there was some comments made about Adam Sandler's masterpiece, The Wedding Singer.
Oh God!
And I'll keep my thoughts brief, but there are some people who are idiots on this podcast, and some who are not. Anyway, on to Rosemary's Baby. Fun fact: in 2008, Rosemary's Baby was almost remade. And who was leading this remake? None other than Michael Bay. So I'd love to hear what you guys would theorycraft about a Michael Bay version in 2008 of Rosemary's Baby. Who would be starring in it? What would the big action set piece be? All that sorts of stuff. Love you guys, except for the people who don't like Wedding Singer. Okay, thanks, bye.
Wonder if I'll get a apology voicemail next week.
Definitely ScarJo as Rosemary, because he has a relationship with her. They did The Island together.
Maybe Megan Fox will throw herself off the building in the beginning.
What about Mark Wahlberg as Rosemary?
Bumblebee.
The action set piece is probably that Satan baby flying out of the nethers.
The action sequences that he would have. Wow.
That guy going blind. Probably be
Paul
a huge
Rudd
set piece.
guy.
That's actually not that bad. I can see that.
There'd be an amazing knife fight at the end where she would actually kill everybody in that room.
Or she would just knife fight the baby. The baby would pop
would
out.
100% see the baby.
Scaled hand coming out of the crib.
Michael Bay showing us that baby.
Oh my God, Michael! Michael, if you want to come on for the Mummy episode, we need to start a campaign to get Michael Bay on this podcast. Ian,
no, we don't.
Ian, former producer. Have you ever looked at his IG? Michael Bay's IG. It's a hoot.
Oh God.
I don't know if you want to load that up on incognito mode so that your IG Explorer doesn't get all Michael Bayed up. But Ian is former producer of this show. He has now moved on to his next gig. We wished him well on his future endeavors. He is hosting the Movies That Changed My Life podcast for IMDb. Kevin Smith was just his guest recently. So I think we were hoping he would land on solid ground after he left us. So it seems that that's the case.
And everybody who touches 70mm just go on to amazing things.
Yeah, we're really
amazing what we can do.
Really happy with how things are turning out for everyone.
So we got to get Brendan on here.
Can you imagine if we got Brendan on this podcast? I would send him a mic if he was coming on.
I believe in the villagers.
I would overnight a USB mic. Villagers, we need you. We need the villagers to unite over the next 2 weeks to get Brendan.
Hey guys, name is Jack. Just listened to your episode on Do the Right Thing, and just wanted to say, excellent episode. I remembered watching this movie in high school for the first time. I believe I was somewhere around 13, 14 years old. I'm now in the military and work in security forces, and this movie has informed me in how I approach the job in so many different ways. In speaking with the general public and that sort of thing. I had no idea this was a movie that came out a year before Rodney King. I actually thought it was a reaction to Rodney King. I also remember this was one of the first movies that my mom cried at the end of for the first time. I remember being blown away, but my mom was just crying. It's definitely impacted me in a very extreme way. Love the podcast, love the artwork. You guys love the discussion. I love listening to people just talking about movies. Keep up the good work. And keep up the artwork. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks for your service.
Mm-hmm. Got some pretty positive feedback on that episode. A couple texts that I got. Quote, how have you not seen this movie yet before? End quote. So it was a fun conversation starter. And I think Jack sent us a few DMs recently on IG. So I also hope Danny keeps up the art for this podcast.
I'll try.
You know, we've seen Proto's been doing some work behind the scenes. You know, I think he's waiting in the wings. He's like in that batter's box waiting for to get called up. Maybe for the wedding singer episode that Danny's not on.
Jesus.
Oh man. Maybe the 10 Commandments episode. Prince of Egypt. And what other ones we float in there?
Passion
of the Christ. God, you want to talk about people weeping in a theater? When I saw Passion of the Christ, that was one of the strangest movie-going experiences of all time for me. Easily.
The only scene I remember is when he gets whipped with that like cat of nine tails and it gets stuck in his ribs.
Oh my God.
They yank it out and the flesh comes.
I remember churches were like, you know, having field trips to go to that movie. That was like required viewing at Catholic churches, if I recall correctly.
One thing I remember is when I saw it in theater, there was no previews. There was nothing on beforehand. And I think that was like the first time I experienced that. And it was like shocking to like walk in and the movie just starts. There was nothing else going on.
Have you guys seen The Last Temptation of Christ? Scorsese's movie?
Mm-mm. No, but isn't that Willem Dafoe?
Willem Dafoe as the Jesus Christ character. That movie is probably more sacrilege to most organized religion. But I remember that being like one of those film school movies that I saw early on too.
A Bible movie I saw recently that I loved was Noah, the Aronofsky movie.
Really?
Yo, that movie's badass.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Who plays Noah?
It's Russell Crowe.
Oh, yeah, wow. I forgot about that movie
and,
entirely.
Jennifer Connelly plays his, what's Noah's wife's name?
Did you rate that on Letterboxd? Proto?
No, this was forever ago.
Yeah,
you watched it recently?
Letterboxd.
I remember I had there's a Campus Crusade for Christ has a headquarters here in Orlando, and I worked there for a little bit, early 20s. And it was right when Mel was starting to work on filming Passion of the Christ, and I worked like the front desk. And so they do the Jesus film there. And so Mel came in actually to just figure out how they did it and how to tell the story and where they shot it. And I remember him coming in for the tour of the place. And yeah, that's crazy. I forgot about that.
What was the Dan Brown book that came out with Da
Vinci Code?
Da Vinci Code, I remember.
Angels and Demons.
I'm thinking of my relationship to my parents and then our local church at the time of that book came out. I remember I read that book and my mom was like, just remember, this is just a book. This is, this has nothing to do with anything. She was like talking me off a ledge. I was like, okay, Mom, got it.
Which is so funny because then I remember the Left Behind series came out.
Oh my God.
Which everybody was eaten up in the Christian community. Like, this book is amazing.
Good old Kirk Cameron.
Could we get Kirk Cameron on for the Mubby episode?
I think we could. Pretending to be Brendan Fraser.
Kirk prepares he just like rewatches the Left Behind series and then we don't tell him that it's the Mummy episode. All right, so we got a lot of plans cooked up in the near future. It sounds like we have some ideas just coming out of this conversation right here. Stay tuned to our Twitter accounts, our IG account. Definitely follow our IG account to see Danny's gorgeous artwork every week. Thank you, everyone, for leaving voicemails, retweeting, et cetera, et cetera. Really appreciate the support of the show. Your word of mouth definitely helps get other people, discover the show, discover Denny's art, and discover Proto's spiritual guidance. And those are the top priorities of this podcast. Next week, Batman, huge episode. The amount, oh my God. I can't wait. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks. '78mm is a VHS Village production and produced by Dale_A. Sponsored by Half Double Design. Original artwork provided by Danny Haas. Spiritual guidance provided by Protolexis. This episode was mixed and edited by me, Slim. Special thanks to the good people at Letterboxd, and for a chance to win a pro Letterboxd account, share the show and tag us on social media at 70mm Pod. Goodbye.